Dumont with our Beyond the Beltway analysis of national politics, featuring occasional injections of rumor and innuendo, all offered up by our panel of political insiders, pundits, power brokers, public servants, professors, and most importantly, plain-speaking Americans from coast to coast. Tonight featuring commentary by Democrat Michael Bauer, Libertarian Brian Lembrecht, Progressive Salim Muwakil, and Nationalist Jennifer Nevins. Our program tonight coming to you from our own base at the Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago, where our toll-free lines are open at 1-800-723-8289. That's 1-800-723-8289. If you want to email me a comment, it's brucedumont@museum.tv. If you want to tweet me a comment, it's at Dumo, at D-U-M-O. And, of course, you can join us on the World Wide Web at beyondthebeltway.com. And you also can watch this program live on our Facebook page, Beyond the Beltway with Bruce Dumont, the Facebook page. It's live all over the world. So wherever you are, we thank you very much for being with us tonight. Another full 2 hours, as we always do, since President Trump has been elected. And I want to begin with the big story over the last several days, and that is the decisions of the president to remove the national security clearance of John Brennan, the former head of the Central Intelligence Agency, and a guy that's had a security clearance for over 35 years in the various government functions that he has had. And the question as to whether or not, obviously, a lot of people are upset with that, some Republicans as well as Democrats. And the president also, or Sarah Huckabee also, at a press conference suggested that there's probably 7 or 8 other people that may have their security clearances withdrawn, and they are being reviewed at the moment. So we're going to talk about that at least in the first portion of the program this evening. But we will begin when you say, okay, John Brennan, here's a longtime government official, head of one of the most important agencies in the United States, known around the world, and all of his predecessors, when their time was up and they went away quietly. They rarely were engaged in political debate and frequently would deflect questions from the media, trying to get them to say one thing or another about the incoming president who wasn't their boss. And John Brennan, he's handled things a little bit differently. And so let's take a moment and listen to some of the things that the former head of the Central Intelligence Agency has said about President Donald Trump.
It's nothing short of treasonous because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
I think Donald Trump has badly sullied the reputation of the office of the presidency. Just so reflective of somebody who, quite frankly, I don't want to use this term maybe, but he's drunk on power. He really is.
Okay, Michael Bauer, you are our card-carrying Democrat. Did those words go too far for you?
Well, I think Director Brennan has elected to enter the political arena in this country, which is his prerogative.
Right.
But by entering the political arena, I guess my reservation is the appropriateness of someone involved formerly with the intelligence of the United States entering the political arena. It's like you want to have your cake and eat it too. And he certainly has the right to enter the political arena. That said, though, let me say, and I think Eugene Robinson said this from the Washington Post, said it this morning perfectly, the president has the right to withdraw security clearances from anyone. The question is, should he have the right to withdraw it for the wrong reasons? He has his list of targets, and the question becomes: is it appropriate that he has his list of targets because they're political enemies?
Okay. Jennifer Nevins, you are our card-carrying Trumpster. I described you as a nationalist, and you
nationalist
take that
conservative.
National
Absolutely.
conservative. But go ahead, your reaction.
Absolutely. I think that even when you have somebody like James Clapper, no friend of Trump. In fact, I think that Brennan and Clapper work hand in hand. He comes out today and says, unfortunately, Brennan has put this national security or national intelligence apparatus in a bad spot because he is so outspoken. And so, in a sense, he was saying he's brought some of this criticism upon himself. We all understand that Trump does have the right to pull the clearance. And what are the wrong reasons for pulling the clearance? Well, what are the right reasons for pulling this clearance? We have Brennan, who is now a paid commentator on MSNBC. He goes on CNN. He's been on
NBC,
Fox before, NBC, all of them, and he's monetized, in effect, his position. Why do you need a security clearance? What purpose is it? In the past, presidents have kept former administration members' security clearances intact so that they could be of assistance to that administration. That's not the role that Brennan plays here. He's not of assistance to Trump. So why does he need that security clearance?
Salim Muwakil joins us. Thanks very much from WVON Radio, a longtime participant on this program in these times. You've been there for over 30 years, former member of the Black Panther Party as a young man. Your reaction?
I think Brennan was a bit hyperbolic, and I think that set him up for the kind of criticism that he's getting from the Trump supporters. He went a little bit overboard with the treason comment. It's hard to walk that back. He didn't have to go that far and still be properly condemnatory of Trump. But that's where I feel about Brennan's comment.
Brian Lembrick is our libertarian. You're a free speech guy, but how about, do you see it as a free speech issue?
Not exactly. Hearing him use the word drunk on power, from a libertarian perspective, what I know about Brennan was the guy that was defending the reports on NSA spying on American citizens, the guy defending the reports on during Obama's tenure on drone usage, on the torture reports. And one of the things I wanted to double check before the show was that Trump had used those torture reports as one of his reasons for why he was revoking his clearance. I'm sorry, a guy like him, I don't know why he was able to have that clearance for as long as he did. Maybe him and a lot of other people are long overdue to get removed.
Well, that sets up what Sarah Huckabee Sanders said, and that is that there's about 5 or 6 others, including James Clapper, including Michael Hayden, who was a Republican appointee, Sally Yates, Peter Skorich, James Comey.
This appears to be punitive, though, and that's the problem. It appears to be so petulant, and for a president to exhibit those.
But in some cases, shouldn't it be a punitive? I mean, if you read the things, you read the things that Susan Page and Peter Skorich and have said about him, why would that not? Why would you want them? Why would you want Bruce Orr still on the government payroll, given the participation he had with his wife on creating a false dossier? I mean, is that the conduct we want in the FBI if we want to regain confidence in the FBI?
He thought there was a clear threat to this country. He thought there was a chance that there was Russian intervention in our government. That's a serious threat.
And
he thought he should bring that to the attention of the FBI. I don't
But what about Peter Skorich? And there was no threat that they saw. The only threat they saw to this country was that people voted for Donald Trump. That was what they were. This was long before Russia. That was their threat. They were in the wheelhouse of investigating Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
They were going by
then they became part of the Mueller team.
The same reason that Donald Trump attracts so much support from those who are anti-deep state. Those anti-deep state comments were threatening to people who represented the deep state.
Absolutely.
We're seeing a reaction and a rebellion by the deep state right now with the media, with all their friends in the media.
Exactly.
And I want to come back and pick up on that discussion with all of our guests at 1-800-723-8289. Do you like the idea that security clearance has been pulled and will be pulled in the future?
If you look hard enough, go off the beaten track far enough, you'll find an America teeming with the unusual, the odd, the downright strange.
I'm Will Klinger, and I'm your guide on a package tour we like to call
Wild Travels. Join us on our weekly road trip to see America's most offbeat and unusual attractions. Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on WTTW Prime.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.
A line is a powerful thing. It connects the global economy to your living room. Cleaner air to stronger markets. Factory floors to less crowded roads. Today's progress to tomorrow's promise. Norfolk Southern. One line, infinite possibilities.
Bruce Dumont back in Chicago. Let's go to telephone calls. They're already with us this evening. Bonnie, listening to us in Crown Point, Indiana, and she is listening and watching tonight on Facebook. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Well, hello there. Listen, this is a kind of a stupid question, and maybe I just don't understand the process, but I had heard on the news that there's over 5 million people in this country that have security clearances. And I realize that a lot of people need it for their jobs, but when you leave the service of this country, is it really safe or is it risky for, you to have a security clearance? I mean, why do all these and all these former Obama officials, I don't understand why they need it. I mean, maybe they had it once, but do they
Bonnie,
need it now?
very good question. In fact, the question you asked is the question we were asking around the table during the commercial break. So, Michael Bauer.
So let me say a good reason why and a good reason why not. A good reason why is that we have this belief, and I think it's sound, that former intelligence officials who maintain security clearances can, based on their experience, give advice to current intelligence officials. And there's some soundness to that. On the other hand, though, and John Brennan said that this morning on Meet the Press, one of the reasons that these former intelligence officials have security clearances is so they can sit on boards and commissions and monetize this. And that, unfortunately, should be unacceptable.
Or be a hired gun for NBC to talk about national security issues. How can anyone think he can give an objective view on anything, given what he has said? And again, if you want to keep your clearance, you don't make a comment. You don't make the personal comments that he's made against the president.
I think one of the great ironies of this was one of these 13 signatories to this complaint about Brennan having his security clearance taken away was none other than General Petraeus, who had his security clearance taken away because he was having pillow talk with his mistress and letting classified information loose. And yet here he is, no shame whatsoever, coming out and saying, yes, this is wrong. I mean, it really is like a cast of characters right now.
Well, see, one of the reasons that they maintain these security clearances far beyond their tenure is because the institutional wisdom that they represent that can be very valuable to the current administration, and that same institutional wisdom is considered the deep state now. So it's an enemy of what the Trump administration is talking about. And that's why he's considered so suspect.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a follow-up question, and I understand all that, but is there not a risk involved in that? I mean, what if one of these people are encouraged to flip and give some of this information away to like an enemy or something?
Right.
I mean, you got 5 million chances walking out there
Right.
of somebody to be a traitor.
Yeah, it's great. It's very beneficial because it isn't necessarily they could be sworn political enemies of the country, but they could also be economic enemies. So if you have within these, I'm not, the figure 5 million sounds a little bit tall to me, but let's just talk about these 13 or 14 people and throw Henry Kissinger in there. I mean, how many? No, seriously, how many countries like Saudi Arabia or Yemen or you name it, or Japan, how many of those countries go and hire some of these people because they want, if not some inside information, they want the perceived clout of this.
It's always been a problem,
It's
though,
always
Bruce.
been part of it.
And it's traditional to this country. It's a part of the
Yes.
perks of
But again, would you
formerly-
acknowledge, Brian, that there isn't anybody on this list, because everybody on this list, they've already stated their dislike or hatred for President Trump. There isn't anybody on this list that's going to be called by Mike Pompeo or anybody in the White House for their opinion.
And
It's
this,
keep your opinions to yourself.
And this is where checks and balances come in. I'm not saying that President Trump is the best person for conducting checks and balances, but somebody is. There's a firewall there at some point. Rand Paul said that he had been lobbying the president to start cutting off these people, and because he believed that whether you want to call it the deep state or however, establishment politicians or figureheads, at some point you have to cut it off or start rotating people. It shouldn't just be a rotating door of people coming in, getting that clearance, and then walking away with that golden ticket.
This is, I think you made a good point, because I think Rand Paul's fingerprints are all over this action because of the the government spying program. And again, if there's anybody, I hope that the next guy to go is James Clapper. James Clapper is a liar. He lied to Congress. He is in contempt of Congress. Republicans and Democrats, whether it's Ron Wyden or whether it's Rand Paul, they both know that he lied directly to the cameras and said there was no such domestic spying thing. He should have been fired then. Then. He should have been fired by President Obama.
I want to hold on to Bonnie's comment, though, because she raises a very important point, and I've read the same thing, that there are approximately 4 to 5 million people in this country who are no longer in government employ, but yet have a certain level of security clearance. Maybe not top secret, but they have a certain level of security clearance. And this is just a employment nesting operation. So people can get lobbying jobs, they can get jobs advising outside interests, as you said, and there needs to be a whole review of the security clearance issue.
It's also, I think, this more than anything else that the president has done or said even since he's been president. And again, I think it will be underscored if indeed there's a couple of other heads to roll and have their security clearance withdrawn. This is the biggest strike at the heart of the swamp, of the D.C. swamp.
And that's why you have some Republicans
and the deep state. That's why you have some Republicans on board. Michael Hayden. I mean, they're all in this together against the people. And by the way, they are, we want to keep taking their advice. Remember, you said that's one of the things?
Yes.
You want to get someone that has experience in government giving advice. Well, given the fact that some of the advice that's been given for the operation of this country over the last 20 years, both Republican and Democrat, was bad advice. I don't want them around. If these guys are the best and the brightest we have, we're in trouble.
That's why the Trump administration is such an ironic, among other things, it's such an ironic administration.
Well, to the average person looking at this, and like to Bonnie, for example, what this looks like to someone like Bonnie and to millions of the rest of us is you being fired from your job or quitting your job and insisting that you still want a key to the building. In what other arena does this work? And so the average American's looking at this and saying, again, Trump is vindicated when we see this kind of a display. Absolutely.
Let's go to another call. Let's go to Scott, listening to us in Austin, Texas, on KLBJ. Nice to hear from Texas. Scott, go ahead.
Monetizing his position isn't a problem for me. If he wants to go to NBC and speak his mind, that's fine. That's why we have a free press. What bothers me about Brennan and people like him, especially Comey and McCabe and the rest of them, is they use their position for politics. I'm a police officer. If I did that stuff, I would lose my job. I would lose my credibility. I'd lose everything. And these guys who are defending him, like McCraven, they're so busy fighting the enemies of this country that they're forgetting to defend us from the enemies of this country. Brennan has abused his office. He's abused it for a very base reason, for politics, not for the good of the country, but for the good of his party. And that's absolutely wrong. That's exactly why he should have lost his credentials or his clearance. And that's exactly why some of these other people should.
Well, he perceives it as a threat to the country, not to the party. That's why they're acting in such a dramatic way.
If I'm a police officer and I sell my access, if I'm a police officer and I sell my access to the police records, or I start to arrest people because I don't like them politically, I can say, well, they're bad guys. They deserve to be in prison. But I'm still violating my oath. I'm still violating the law. That's what Brennan did. I don't care what he thinks. What did he do? What did he do? What is he doing?
If you had a police chief, sir, who was overtly violating the Constitution, and from your perspective, what is your alternative to bring that violation to public notice? How do you do it if you perceive that to be the case?
If Brennan is saying, I disagree with Trump for these reasons, that's fine with me. That's monetizing as far as I'm concerned. But if he's saying, I just don't like this guy, or I disagree with his policies, and so I'm going to use my position to undermine him, that is wrong. If he's going to say, I'm going to use my position to help the other party win, to help skew an election, or to help what my party wants,
but a key point here,
as a member of the government, that is what's wrong.
I'm sorry, Scott. I think another part of this, which I think it gets back to, is the value of that moniker. You know, when he's asked to speak, and I don't know what his speaking rate is, but when you're saying someone, this guy is the former head of the CIA, that to me means this is a guy that knows a lot of stuff that nobody else knows. So he's smarter than everybody else. What I don't quite understand is why he felt so compelled to go so far beyond the pale of any of his predecessors to warn the country, because he could have gone in his role at NBC. In fact, he already does. You listen to any of his analysis, you know where his stand is.
But don't you think Trump has raised the stakes by saying, like, for example, the media is the enemy of the people? That's rather hyperbolic, wouldn't you say?
That doesn't have anything to do with Brennan.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, it's the kind of rhetoric I'm talking about. And when you go over the top in that way, you tend to provoke those kinds of reactions from people. That's what I'm saying.
You intend to promote reaction in the political circles. Donald Trump has enough criticism within the political circles, rightfully so, because that's part of the free political speech we have. He's got that. Why is someone who is the head of the CIA compelled, unless it's hatred for the person, why is he compelled to do something that none of his predecessors would ever do?
Maybe it's patriotism.
Maybe
that's his motivation. You may not agree with his perspective, but that I think certainly is his motivation.
Wrapping Brennan up in nobility
Nathan
is
Hale.
something I can't
So you see
even.
him as Nathan Hale.
Oh, wow.
I think it's bitterness, and I think eventually he's going to want to warn people with an eventual book deal that's going to come out, but not this week because there's another one everybody has to read.
We're not going to touch that.
I know
book,
we're not.
But we're going to take some more calls. 1-800-723-8289. Thank you.
Stage and screen star Stacy Keach is Ernest Hemingway in Pamplona, directed by Robert Falls. A tour de force about a force of nature. Pamplona transports you to Spain in 1959, where Hemingway is desperate to reclaim his glory. Despite winning the Nobel and Pulitzer Prizes, the literary warrior is feeling the weight of his own legend. Enter the life and mind of this creative genius. Pamplona at Goodman Theater.
Honey, what's the best vacation we've ever had?
This one.
Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, Longboat Key. Real, authentic Florida. Plan to visit online at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Moving our economy for 160 years. BNSF, the engine that connects us.
Bruce Dumont back in Chicago. Thanks very much for being with us. Michael Bauer's with us, Brian Lembrick, and Salima Wakil and Jennifer Nevins. They are all with us this evening. And Jennifer, you've been chomping at the bit. You want to get in because you feel that you've not made your case today.
Well, listen,
What do you think? What do you think of John Brennan?
John Brennan.
Don't hold back.
To hear that John Brennan is being portrayed like he is a patriot, that he's speaking out because of his compunction that we have got to save this country from the clutches of Donald Trump and his evil administration, is a load of crap. The man is a swamp dweller extraordinaire. Okay, he's double teamed with Clapper. He's in Comey's pocket. The three of them go hand in hand. He lied about the warrant, getting the FISA warrant, saying it had nothing to do with the dossier. His hands were all over the dossier. He has it in for Donald Trump. He's motivated by hate. He is not motivated by patriotism.
How do you know
he
that?
wants to get attention by his own words, what he has done. His scowling, the awful remarks he's been making on TV for 2 years about Donald Trump. It's very obvious that this is not a man that is motivated by love of country. This is someone looking to get even. He's motivated by retribution. He's flat out got ugly rhetoric. And the idea that he is just this character, this figure that just hovers above it all is really repugnant to us.
Jennifer, what is the retribution that he wants? What is he getting even for?
Calling the president treasonous, going on any camera that he can get in front of.
You know how many people
and
I know
ripping him
who
up.
think the president is treasonous?
He is not just any person. He is not just any person. He is somebody with a security clearance.
Okay.
He's the head of the CIA. He's given a big microphone, and look what he's doing with
How
it.
many members of the Senate do you think the president is treasonous?
Quite a few. Quite a few Democrats, yes. And
Okay.
that's what we're speaking to here.
And
It's partisanship.
and probably a number of Republicans. And probably a number of Republicans who are afraid to speak out but say it privately.
Absolutely. I don't
What about
disagree
you?
with it.
Do you think he's treasonous?
Do I think the president is treasonous? I am very interested in the Mueller investigation coming to a conclusion and seeing the Mueller report.
Will it ever come to a conclusion?
I have grave concerns about the president.
Okay, all right. But my question to you then is, are some of these other people who are using the T word, are they jumping the gun? Are they doing it for political, points? Are they doing it? I'm sure that Brennan's speaking fees have gone way up. Donald Trump is going to make him a lot of money.
Yes. Do I think the president is treasonous at this point? No. Do I think the president should be impeached at this point? No. But we're early in the process.
What about you? With answers to the same question. Do you think he's treasonous?
I don't
Should he be impeached based on what you know now?
I just think he's an inadequate president. He's really in many ways an embarrassing president. But I don't think you have to attribute these nefarious motives to Brennan. I don't think he's, that's going over the top, I think, as well. I mean, he's a reasonable guy who's a career, agent of the intelligence community, which and that's.
How do you feel about everybody else in the intelligence jumping on board to support the guy?
The same reason that he is anti-Trump was the same reason that he was anti telling the truth about what Snowden revealed, about Snowden's revelations. He wanted to protect the deep state. That's what he wanted to do then. That's why he's anti-Trump now. He wants to protect. And you don't have to attribute nefarious motives to it.
That's not nefarious? Trying to protect the deep state?
Is what keeps this country stable. They think. They
think in their own minds. You're absolutely
you may
right.
not agree, but people think that there's a reason for the deep state.
Do
to
you?
provide
There is.
stability.
Well, let's go.
I don't believe
That
it.
almost sounds treasonous in itself, defending the deep state.
No.
Yes, it does.
This is very, very interesting. So you believe that the deep state is a positive force?
Bruce. Me?
That wasn't what he was saying.
No.
But I get it.
No, but I want to make sure that I heard you clearly.
This is the threat that the people who are protecting, who feel that Trump is treasonous. One of the motives that they are acting on is that he represents a threat to this ongoing institutional stability, and he does represent a threat.
Oh, there's no question about it.
So they're threatened by that, and they're reacting in that way.
And I'm comfortable with.
And I agree with the challenge to that state. I just don't agree with the nature of the challenge.
Well, there's different ways to challenge it, but again, that's what our past election was like. I mean, there wasn't anything that Donald Trump said, as crazy as some of the things that you might have thought he was saying, people had a chance to say, I like that craziness or I don't like that craziness.
right.
And again, there was an election, and he is speaking for the people who never would stand up and say the things that have been said, and that is, like I said, all these experts, and we're going to get back to this, we're going to get back to all the experts inside the Beltway, Republicans, Democrats. They live together. They think alike. They go to the same social parties,
And it's not-
and they want to defend. They want to defend that inside the Beltway,
correct.
Deep
And it's
state.
not just this country. It's,
No.
it's the Atlanticist alliance, and we're having problems with that as well.
I have to tell
I
you
agree.
something. You know what? And I have a number of friends and acquaintances, some of whom appear on this show regularly.
Good.
Who are big supporters of Trump, and I value their friendship, but they need, and you need to understand, that he and his presidency scares me terribly. It scares me because I view him as continually threatening democratic traditions in this country, and democratic with a small d, not a capital D. Now, it's my prerogative to be scared,
Absolutely.
and you don't have to agree with me, but I think you need at least to make an effort to understand why I'm so scared.
And I don't think that it's that the issue here that we're talking about is why individual Democrats, progressives, or people on the left side of the aisle might disagree with Trump or be afraid of his administration. I don't think that that's even what's being discussed here. We're talking about John Brennan and his cohorts in the CIA and why they're doing what they're doing. And my point of view on this is they're not doing it from altruistic motives or for the good of the country, but they're doing it for themselves. So that's where I think we're missing each other.
That's where we're missing each other. Yes.
A lot of them also, whether you were right or left, and I think this is part of the verdict that the American people made in the last election, a lot of that experts from inside the Beltway, a lot of that, all the wisdom, collective wisdom, they all talk to each other. It's like being a baseball manager. They always find a job somewhere. They're listened to, and the American people said, you know what? No. If we wanted the red state, if we wanted to reinforce this, we would have voted for Hillary, and we want a guy that's going to say
vote for Hillary.
well, they did, but in the Electoral College, the point is the idea of throw the rascals out, drain the swamp, whatever term you want to use. That's what they voted for. So here's a president doing that, and here this guy, sort of, I would say one of the key pillars. And by the way, during the campaign, he talked about errors that had been made by the intelligence community.
Yes.
You guys agreed with much of what was said.
And that's what terrified guys like Brennan.
Well, of course it does. Because you know what? These people, they don't want to be criticized. And you know who also doesn't want to be criticized? The most thin-skinned profession in the world? The media.
True.
They don't want anybody to challenge
I know
them.
that.
They don't want to be challenged.
Right.
We know more than you do. That is the motto of the deep state. We know more than you do. We're smarter than you are. And so because we know this and we know all the secrets, we can make intelligent decisions, like starting a war in Iraq on phony pretense. Or from your perspective, let's go back a few years.
Okay.
The way in which the FBI, the things they did to Martin Luther King Jr.
COINTELPRO.
Of
Indeed.
course.
Yeah.
That was
Right.
that was the deep state.
That's exactly what it was. But
Many of those people are still there.
Right. That is true. The flip side of that, of course, is that the expertise that they developed in that and exhibiting that has become routine. It's become really the state of art in this country. It's become kind of conventional wisdom, and the Trump administration challenged that.
And he's challenging it today by his denunciation of some of those within the FBI hierarchy who he believes, and many people believe, acted improperly. And he's saying to those people, you know what, you may lose your security clearance too. And again, if you've read the stuff that Peter Skorich and Page and Clapper and Susan Rice, not so much Susan Rice, but certainly Michael Hayden, if you read some of these things or just focus on the FBI, why would you leave those people there? To me, it took too long to throw Peter Skorich out.
Bruce, I will tell you again, if you're looking for someone who's going to reform the deep state, who's going to come in and really be a reformer.
Like we thought Obama would be.
Trump, from my perspective, is far from a perfect messenger. He is a very imperfect messenger because part of the problem with Trump, when we talk about people who are thin-skinned, have you ever seen anyone as thin-skinned as Donald J. Trump?
That's what makes him so entertaining.
Well, it makes him entertaining, but it also makes him very
Dangerous.
scary to me.
Yes.
Because he should invite criticism. He should welcome criticism. You know, and
But
and
he's
he
not going
doesn't.
to do that. That's not who he is. That's not who.
But that's what the president of the United States should be.
You know, it
It should be, but again, you know what? There were 16, 17 Republicans running.
They didn't make it. He made it.
They did make it.
I know he made it.
He did. He outskunked them.
But doesn't that concern you, Bruce? That kind of appeal to populism, to passions, is so effective.
But that
What
Bernie
bothered-
Sanders
go
was
ahead.
effective with an appeal, with a
He did. That is
populism.
true.
The same feeling that animates those of us who are in Trump's corner also animated the people who were in Bernie Sanders' corner. There really isn't a lot of daylight between feeling like we are tired of the establishment, we're tired of the status quo. Those feelings ran high on both sides. So really, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody.
And people weren't really using the word deep state back then, but that's, I think, what it's been characterized as now.
We were using it, but it's been appropriated. Just
You
like
under- then you
just like
understand where we're
political
coming
correctness
from
has been
then.
appropriated.
So-
Well, that's he knows a few things about branding. We know that.
Right.
We've got a full board of lights. We will bring in the people from coast to coast and border to border and around America when we return from Chicago. I'm Bruce Dumont. Thanks very much for joining us this week.
If you look hard enough, go off the beaten track far enough, you'll find an America teeming with the unusual, the odd, the downright strange.
I'm Will Klinger, and I'm your guide on a package tour we like to call
Wild Travels.
Join us on our weekly road trip to see America's most offbeat and unusual attractions. Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on WTTW Prime.
Stage and screen star Stacy Keach is Ernest Hemingway in Pamplona, directed by Robert Falls. A tour de force about a force of nature. Pamplona transports you to Spain in 1959, where Hemingway is desperate to reclaim his glory. Despite winning the Nobel and Pulitzer Prizes, the literary warrior is feeling the weight of his own legend. Enter the life and mind of this creative genius. Pamplona at Goodman Theater.
When CSX moves forward, so do the rest of us.
Back in Chicago, thank you very much. A very quick personal note. Again, I've shared this on the Facebook page, but last week on this program, I shared the news that my sister had passed away, and I also reported that my brother-in-law was in hospice, and I can report this week that he passed away a couple of days ago. So a former U.S. Air Force veteran passed away at 83 years old, George Burns in Calabasas, California.
And the whole Beyond the Beltway family sends you deepest condolences.
Thank you very much, and just the tremendous response on Facebook, and we thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Let's go to Meridian, Idaho, where Bob is listening to us on KBOI. Go ahead.
Hi, Bruce. Sorry for your losses.
Thank you.
On John Brennan, I can only say it's just your point that for the last 20 years it hasn't worked. I agree with you, except it's been more like 50 or 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
For 50 or 60 years, we've been ruled by the elites from Yale and Harvard and the elite schools telling us, sit down, shut up, we know what we're doing. And for the last 50 or 60 years, we went from the number one country in the world to the number one debtor in the world and a laughingstock of the world. And now that we have a president that stands up for the people that fight and die and live the actual American life, not the elite life in Washington and jetting around the world, they don't like it.
Can I?
Michael Bauer's got a response, Bob.
I think Bob said something that triggered something in my mind when you first said, this goes back longer, 50, 60 years. And I thought, maybe this all goes back to Vietnam. Because Vietnam was a war where the intelligence was continually faulty, and all the boys we sent over to fight in Vietnam were heavily boys of color or boys from white rural areas. The sons of the so-called elite generally got deferments.
Right.
And so maybe a lot of this distrust starts with Vietnam because it was a class war.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it starts before that.
Okay.
It starts with Yalta. And let's go back and we're going to divide Europe, and we're going to let 100 million people die behind the Iron Curtain and in communist China because we're going to have a geopolitical balance. Mm-hmm. Because that's what Yale and Harvard graduates were taught to think.
Bob, listen, thanks for your call. We're going to move from Meridian, Idaho to Jonestown, Texas, where Jeff is listening to us. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bruce, thanks for taking my call.
Good.
My feeling is that I used to be in the government. I've had top secret security clearances. When I finally resigned or retired from the military, I tried to have my security clearance extended, and I was told I couldn't do it, and I felt like I was being given a runaround. I know other people had it done for them, so I didn't understand what the criteria is. And even as I listen to people here talking, I'm not picking up on it. Some people apparently have special expertise, and some people have special missions carrying over in the government as advisors. But it seems like a lot of people just go to contractors, but they have that clearance in hand because they knew or had a special connection to get it extended. So I'd like to know if anybody can tell me exactly what the criteria is for the average top secret security or secret security clearance holder to have it extended beyond their retirement or the time they leave their government service.
Is there anybody at the table? I don't think there's anybody at the table that can answer that question. But Jeff, you raise a good question, and I would think that hopefully the news media. Well, I will trust the news media to hopefully do some research because they have the capacity to do so, and explain to the American. This is a good learning moment where the American people can learn about the specifics of those with top secret clearance and what it means and what are the benefits. And has there ever been anybody that has abused those? I mean, this is a good time for have that discussion. So it isn't so much. I mean, at the moment, the focus is on people that have said things that the president doesn't like, and the media has run and made it's an issue of free speech, and the president is punitive, and he's going after these people. And how many times have we heard in the last 48 hours the term enemies list? Well, I would dare say that any president has had an enemies list. They don't necessarily mention it by that, but I'm sure Barack Obama had a list of people that he did not view as his friends either. So at this particular point, we've heard the first wave of that. That's sort of the political response to this. But I would agree with you. I would like to know the historical context and the current context. How does somebody get a security clearance, and how do they lose it? And have there been violations of it? And that's important news I think the American people deserve to have. Thanks very much for your call. Well, go ahead.
I appreciate this desire to examine these traditions that have really been overlooked. I mean, have become essentially conventional wisdom. I mean, people who had security clearances have gone on to use them for very lucrative careers. So I appreciate that. But what I'm a little bit wary of is this expertise aversion that I'm hearing. People are, they are rejecting any kind of expertise simply because of this negative association with the past. Expertise is extremely important. Yale and Harvard are the top schools almost on the planet. And people from all over the world are coming to Yale and Harvard to learn techniques that are very necessary. And to simply dismiss that as some sort of erroneous mysticism I think is the faulty direction.
It's an anti-intellectualism, which
it can also be interpreted as an anti-elitism, though, as well.
It can
so
be
I
that.
think that there's an element of that.
It can be that, yes.
Right. A little bit of everything. We are through with hour number one. Brian in Roselle is standing by. Hopefully he'll be with us when we come back on the other side. We've got some more things to discuss, and we will do that. From coast to coast and border to border, I'm Bruce Dumont, now around the world on BeyondTheBeltway.com and also on the Beyond the Beltway Facebook page. If you're watching us or listening to us, and I think we had our first caller tonight who was watching us on Facebook. So hopefully there's many more out there. And our guests will continue in the next hour after the news. And if you're watching us on television, we'll see you next week. On radio, we'll be right back.
Honey, what's the best vacation we've ever had?
This one.
Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, Longboat Key, real, authentic, Florida. Plan to visit online at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Welcome to the world, 2116. You can fly across town in minutes, or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars, and solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
Today, fresh fruits and vegetables will go from a field in California to a grocer in Miami. A bottle of beer from Eagle Pass will journey to a restaurant in Manhattan. A 2x4 in Oregon will find its way to a townhome in Denver. A hybrid will say goodbye to Detroit and hello to a showroom in Austin. While a steel beam will leave a mill in Illinois for a high-rise in Phoenix. And a flat screen in China will head to an electronics store in Memphis. Because today, as every day, wherever you find business, you'll find us.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.